Hey everyone, I'm Emma Mitchell and I'm an energy healing guide. And for today's episode, I wanted to tell you some more stories, this time about a different apartment I lived in Colorado Springs. So I lived in this apartment for, I think, 5 years. And this place really was interesting because I guess it was like an old barracks for maybe the Air Force. In Colorado Springs, there's a ton of military installments there. And so there was a lot of things that I heard even before I moved in there that were related to this being a haunted place. And it was an interesting apartment complex anyway. It still does exist, but it's just two stories and there's several buildings, and each building has either four apartments in it or two apartments in each of the doors. So I lived in the middle. And so there was just somebody below me and somebody above me, and then two different, sets of four apartments on both sides. Because they were so old, I could hear my neighbors all the time and things that they were doing. So I started to understand what was noise of neighbors and what was noise of weird things that I couldn't explain. So it's important to know in this part of this that I started tuning into my psychic abilities when I lived in that apartment complex. However, I only had just started doing it. So I wasn't really able to see things. I was had it still had a pretty strong fear of what was going on around me, but I couldn't totally tell what was happening or what I was seeing or what was, communicating with me. I moved into those apartments in 2019, and it wasn't until 2020, I think, that I really, met my spirit guides and started doing that work. I think was it the same weekend or a couple weekends after I moved in? My neighbor, I met her outside and she was like, "These apartments are haunted as heck." And she shared a wall with me. And so that already set me up for, having some questions about things. But even the first night I moved into my place, I had a sense that something was off in there. For several weeks, I could hear this noise. So as soon as you walked into my front door of my apartment, it was wood floor. It was really cool, actually, like old wood floors, big picture window, old cabinets, like 1940 style, like tin cabinets. But when you walked into my front door of my apartment, I was on the second floor, and there was a big closet that was used for storage. And it was I guess it was like a loft style kind of, so you could walk in, and then there was this extra area you could step up and store a bunch of things in there. The first few weeks, I could hear what sounded like a little boy bouncing a ball on the wall. And I know you're probably like, how do you know it was a little boy? Well, even at that time, I did have a sense of this is a kid, and it just sounded like it. It sounded like a kid just bouncing a ball on the wall randomly. Well, at that point, luckily, I had known the way to, remove a spirit or at least ask for angels to come down and take a spirit up. So I did do that, and it did work because I didn't hear that kid after that. In my kitchen, though, and this happened the whole time I lived there, every few nights, I would, get up in the middle of the night to do something and go in the kitchen to get water or deal with some. I have dry eyes, so I was like often warming up my eye mask in the microwave or whatever to clear, to put on my eyes. So I would get up in the middle of the night and go in the kitchen. And I had this light, and it was a globe light that was right over in the ceiling of the kitchen. Every few nights, sometimes many nights in a row, that light would glow like it was on, but it was not on. But it had this really faint, actually, it wasn't even that faint. It was kind of a strong glow that you could look at it and it looked like it was still on, but just on a low setting. There was no setting for that light. It was one, on and off for the light switch. And that happened the whole time I was there. And would always freak me out. Like I knew there was some sort of spirit in that space. It wasn't until later when I, was able to learn how to clear people's homes that I remotely took myself back into that apartment. Somebody else is living there now. And I saw there's a family. There was like a man and a woman and a kid or something that was stuck. These spirits were stuck in that kitchen, and I was able to help them move on. But yeah, that light would glow so much. And I had my friend look at it, was it an electrical thing? And it wasn't because it didn't happen all the time. Sometimes it would just be dark in there, and then other times it would be glowing. I would say the scariest thing that would happen was on the trying to think of like directions right now. The south facing wall of my apartment, which connect was the wall, somebody else's wall was on the other side. Every now and then I would hear this really strong banging on the wall. And it would happen at so many different times of the day and even at night. When I first moved in there seemed to be a woman, and I say seemed because I never met her, I never saw her, but I could hear her. And when there was banging, I would hear her screaming, "Shut the F up, shut the F up," like constantly around the banging. And I never knew what was going on, but I assumed that maybe she had some mental issues. So one time I did call the landlord and the property manager, and I said something and she said, "Yeah, we're working on getting her moved out. We know we've had some complaints about her." And so I thought, well, this is just this lady hearing stuff or whatever, because it would be completely quiet in the complex and I would hear her banging. Well, she moved out and there was nobody in that apartment and I would still hear the banging. And it was like, bat, bat, bat on the wall, like super loud, coming from either the wall or down below. And one time I had a friend over and it was like 8 p.m. at night. And I said, "Can you go look and see what that noise is?" And he went out the front door, went into the door to the next apartment, or, the next four apartments to the other side. And he looked in there, he was like, "There's nothing there, there's nobody home." I don't know what that is, but the where it was coming from in the wall was almost like the bottom part of the wall, like underneath the floor. I don't know what it was, but it even there was one time I was up for some reason at 3 a.m. and I heard that banging. Oh, it still gives me chills. Like, I don't know what it was, but it was not a good, I think it was some sort of nasty entity, and I don't even want to psychically look into what that is because it scared me. Um, this story is kind of weird because I heard it from a neighbor, but a neighbor who lived in actually that same, not that apartment next to me, but underneath that apartment. He told me one time that he would sometimes hear in the morning, in the early morning before anybody else was up, he would hear voices in the bathroom saying, like, "Hurry up, somebody's coming, hurry up." And he got the sense that maybe this was like a loop, a spirit loop, that maybe somebody was breaking into an apartment or something. I don't know, but he said he would hear it once in a while. I never heard that, but when I say you can hear your neighbors, you could hear everything. Like I could hear when my neighbor was coughing downstairs. I could hear when he was in the bathroom. I mean, it was, it was a lot. There was no soundproofing or insulation or anything in that place. Um, I did have this feeling like there was some sort of nasty entity in my room, especially towards the end of living there. I didn't always feel like that, but towards the end, I did feel like something was in the corner watching me. And this time period aligned with I had this neighbor on the other side that shared like my bedroom wall was shared with her apartment, and she was like off her rocker. I don't know what her deal was. I don't know if she's on drugs or what, but she would like vacuum in the middle of the night, vacuum the walls and scream. She would scream too. She would scream at her cats. Like it was a whole thing. Talk about a nightmare neighbor. Um, but when right around the time she moved in, I started sensing that there was some sort of dark entity in the corner of the room that shared the wall with her. And I never saw it. I just felt it. Like I sensed it. I felt like something was watching me all the time. And in fact, when I moved out, I took several of the things from my bedroom and moved them into the house we're in now. And one of them was this picture of a monk. And I may have talked about this before in another episode, but I have this picture of a monk that's laughing, and it's one of my favorite pictures. My boyfriend hates it. And I have a dresser. And the dresser and the monk picture had so much dark energy attached to them. And I do feel that that came from whatever that dark parasitic entity was in that space. When I did do that remote clearing, I did see it, I did find it, I did move it out. So I hope that that person who lives in that apartment now is so happy because I did them a big favor by moving that. But I did feel like it was clear, it was cleansing for me to see what was in there and to help release some of those spirits. But yeah, so those things did carry that heavy energy that was from that apartment, from that space, from that dark entity. So keep in mind if you've ever lived in a haunted home or if you felt like there was dark energy somewhere you lived and you have those pieces with you now, that furniture or something from there, you may want somebody to look at the energy of those pieces and clear it because sometimes that stuff can carry or energies, entities can latch on. And I forgot to mention, just remember that I did have a parasitic entity attached to that monk picture too, that was living in the picture itself. So, living, I say living loosely, but staying in there. And I pulled it out and it did have red eyes and it was black. And I moved that energy out. So I don't know if it just like broke itself off into pieces and some of it came with me, but I was a lot happier once I cleared that picture. I had not cleared any of the items in my home when we moved into this space. And then when I noticed that, I was like, dang, that thing's been with us for a couple years now. So finally, I wanted to tell just a story about how you can help spirits move on. And I know this isn't for everybody, but if you feel inclined and you want to help ghosts move on, like if you know for sure that there's a ghost in your home and it's not negative, it's not causing you any harm, you can simply do this. All you need to do is call on angels, say, angels, please help this spirit move on. Please bring them up off of the earth plane and help them find peace. Now, if the spirit wants to go, then the spirit will go with them. Sometimes it helps to do it when you're not even in your home. So, years ago, actually, I think I told this story before, but I had that little boy spirit in the apartment in Kalamazoo, Michigan. And I was staying at my mom's in Myrtle Beach, and I ended up asking angels to come down and help that little boy spirit move on when I was out of the home. And it did help to move him out because I had tried it in the apartment and for some reason it wasn't working, but it was almost like I had to remove myself from the space for it to work. So when we were in Meeker, Colorado last summer, We went and looked at this old schoolhouse that's outside of the city or outside the town limits. And as soon as I peered in the window, I saw for some reason there was like a kid spirit in every single seat in the schoolhouse, which was weird to me. Like, why would kid ghosts be trapped there? But they were all there. They were all smiling and happy, but I felt like it was my responsibility to help them move on and find peace, to not just be stuck in a classroom, you know? So I did do that. I called on angels to help them move off the earth plane, move up and out, and they did. And I saw all the angels move them out. And then, a couple minutes later, I went back and looked in the window, and there were zero kids in seats. So you don't have to have psychic abilities like me or energy clearing abilities like me to help ghosts move on. Just know that they're not always going to want to move on. Some of them do. Some of them are trapped and they don't want to be here. Some of them want to stick around, and some of them might get a little mad at you if you ask them to move on and they're territorial or whatever. But use your best judgment. Call on angels, ask them to help any spirits that want to move on and see what happens. Okay, I hope that this episode was entertaining for you and I didn't scare you too much. I did get a little scared when I was talking about the banging in the wall, just remembering that. But if you have any situations like this in your own life that you either want to talk about on the spirit stories with me, or if you feel like this is still happening and you need a house clearing, please send me a message and I'm happy to look into it either long distance or even in person if you live near me. But I hope you have a great rest of your day. And please, if you're interested in tapping into your psychic or clairvoyant or intuitive abilities, or learning how to self-heal, check out my Patreon page or my website and find several meditations and guided things that will help you do that. Have a great rest of your day.